Welcome, dear seeker of truth, keeper of quiet questions. If you found yourself here reading these words, it's not by chance. Maybe something called to you, a flicker in the heart, a silence between your thoughts, a sense that there's more to life than the visible surface. Whatever brought you here, welcome. You're not late. You're exactly on time. What you're about to read is not a lesson. It is not doctrine. It is a remembering, a map woven through mystery and fire. Read not just with the eyes, but with the space behind them. And now let us begin. Part 1, The Whisper Before Awakening. What if I told you there are certain words, ancient, vibrating, and precise, that are not meant to inspire, but to unlock? Words that do not comfort the mind, but awaken something far older, hidden deep in your core. Perhaps they do not even sound different from ordinary language, and yet, when heard at the right time, by the right soul, they echo like a forgotten song from another life. There comes a moment in certain lives where everything on the surface seems to be in order. Goals are achieved, the bills are paid, compliments are received, and yet something feels off. Like a shadow at noon, like a silence that hums beneath every loud moment. A strange yearning without a name. You can't explain it, and yet it follows you, quietly asking, is this all? That feeling is not emptiness, it is a signal. The call of something ancient stirring inside you. And no, it doesn't come with thunder or prophecy. It comes as restlessness, as boredom with what once excited you, as a curiosity that no one around you seems to share. You are not losing your mind, you are beginning to remember. Every ancient soul in every cycle eventually hears this call. And once you hear it, there is no returning to sleep. You may try, you may distract yourself, you may even succeed for a while. But soon, the signs become too loud to ignore. Repeating numbers, dreams that feel more real than waking life, words that find you at precisely the right moment. These are not coincidences. They are the universe whispering in its secret language. And what it's whispering are not commands, not predictions, but codes. Codes meant to be remembered. Codes meant to awaken you from within. And now, the veil begins to lift. Part 2, The Key of Knowing. They say that knowledge is power, but what kind of knowledge? The one written in books? The one quoted in clever conversations? Or is there another kind, one that burns quietly in the soul, waiting not to be learned, but to be remembered? To truly know is not to accumulate, it is to awaken. Real knowledge does not sit idle in your mind like a museum of ideas. It moves through you. It breaks you apart and puts you back together differently. You don't own it, you become it. And that is why the first key, to know, is not intellectual, it is sacred. Imagine this, a flame in a cave. It is small, but it lights the entire space. That's what true knowing feels like. Not 1,000 scattered facts, but one clear light that shows you who you are beneath the masks. And to reach this light, you must be willing to enter darkness. That is the paradox. In ancient alchemy, this stage was called nigredo, the blackening, the putrefaction, the necessary death of false knowledge. What you think you know must decay so that truth can grow from the ashes. This isn't poetic symbolism, it is the actual feeling of awakening. Confusion, doubt, letting go of what once felt so certain. Not easy, but essential. The ancients whispered of a hidden sphere in the tree of life. They called it da'at. It doesn't appear on the map, it's invisible, because true knowledge is not visible, it is not external. It is what bridges mind and heart. When what you know in your head becomes something you feel in your bones and live through your choices, that is the crossing. That is da'at. Solomon, the ancient king, was offered anything, riches, glory, conquest. But he asked for something rare, understanding, wisdom, the ability to discern truth. And in that choice, he unlocked abundance, not as a reward, but as a natural result. Because when you truly know, everything aligns. But knowing, real knowing, asks for humility. It does not shout, it doesn't need to prove anything. It moves silently through presence. You can feel it when someone carries it, not by their words, but by the way the room shifts when they enter. The calm, the clarity, the gravity. That is knowledge that has become being. So if you feel lost, uncertain, unknowing, you are closer than you think. You are standing at the doorway of real wisdom. Let the false certainties fall away. Let the questions remain unanswered. Real knowledge does not rush, it waits, it ripens, and when it arrives, it doesn't explain, it transforms. Part 3, The Will That Burns. Once the light of knowing begins to flicker within, something else awakens, quietly at first but unmistakably. It starts not as noise but as a pulse, a pressure, a throb in the chest that has no name but demands movement. This is not desire. Desire changes, desire fades, but this is will. True will does not scream. It does not announce itself with grand declarations. It hums, it breathes. It rises from beneath layers of distraction and speaks without language. It is the soul's original command, before fear, before logic, before anyone told you who you had to be. And once you hear it, truly hear it, your old life begins to tremble. The ancients understood will not as something you control, but as something you surrender to. The sacred fire that fuels stars, that births galaxies, that turns seeds into forests, it is the same force that lives inside you. When you align with it, you don't become someone else. You become what you were always meant to be. This will does not ask for permission. It doesn't wait until everything is safe. It doesn't care about your plans. It is the compass of your essence, pulling you toward experiences, people, and choices that crack you open and awaken something sleeping inside. And that's what makes it terrifying, because it demands you change, not later, now. In Hermetic tradition, this force is the hidden flame, the secret heat of transformation. Without it, no spiritual process takes root, no alchemy ignites. It is the fire beneath the cauldron, the breath that brings life to the word. And unlike fleeting passions, true will stays. It does not tire. It waits until you are ready to obey your soul, not society. You've felt it before. That pull to start something you couldn't explain. That ache for meaning in a room full of noise. That strange certainty that you're meant to do something that terrifies you. That is not a phase. That is not your imagination. That is will, and it is sacred. The world is full of people who know, but do not act. They read, they speak, they believe, but something is missing. That missing piece is will, the fuel, the fire. Without it, knowing rots into regret. Without it, your truth becomes a ghost that haunts you in moments of stillness. But with it, everything changes. True will is not reckless, it is clear. It doesn't rush, but it doesn't wait for consensus. It moves when it must. It is the divine rhythm of your life trying to get your attention. And once you follow it, you begin to notice something strange. Synchronicities. Doors opening. Words arriving at the perfect moment. Because when you align with your will, reality listens. You begin to remember why you came. Not in words, but in movement. Not in dreams, but in action. Your soul stops whispering and begins to roar. And every time you try to go back to who you were before, it feels like trying to fit into skin that no longer belongs to you. This is will, not as effort, but as truth. Not as ambition, but as alignment. And once awakened, it becomes your true north. No matter the winds, no matter the storms, it burns, quietly, eternally. Part 4. To dare, the fire that walks. Knowing is a light, will is a flame. But daring is when the flame begins to walk. When it leaves the sanctuary of silence and steps out into the unknown. It's the moment when the soul says, now. Not when you're ready, not when it's safe, but now. To dare is not to be fearless. It is to move while afraid. It is to act even with shaking hands, to speak with a voice that trembles. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to be owned by it. And that is why daring is holy, because it transforms the invisible into the real. You've known this moment, that threshold, that edge, when you felt the call, deep aching, and knew what you needed to do, but didn't. You paused, you overthought, you shrank, and that too is part of the journey, because daring is not something you plan, it is something you become. In spiritual alchemy, this is the boiling stage. The moment when the vessel heats, when the elements clash and rise, it is wild, unstable, alive. This is where most people stop, because this is where it gets real. The dreams become decisions, the path leaves the page and touches your skin, and it won't be perfect. Daring doesn't wait for the perfect moment. It doesn't need all the information, it doesn't need every skill or every resource. What it needs is honesty, a single step, one real action that declares, I choose to live my truth. It can be quiet, lighting a candle, writing a sentence, making a phone call, ending something that drains your soul, beginning something that terrifies you. Boldness is not about size, it's about alignment. You don't have to roar, you just have to move. In Hermetic wisdom, the universe does not respond to ideas, it responds to vibration. Action is vibration in motion. The leap, the risk, the commitment, When you dare, something shifts in the air. Possibilities begin to ripple, realities begin to bend, because the divine meets you halfway, but only once you take the first step. This is why daring is the alchemical spark that changes everything. Knowing prepares you, will fuels you, but daring initiates the transformation. Without it, nothing lives. Without it, all you have are sacred intentions gathering dust in the soul, and it will scare you. It should. If it doesn't, it's not big enough. The unknown is the birthplace of the miraculous, and the universe, like any great teacher, will wait until you're willing to walk without seeing the full map. That is the contract, that is the cost, and also the reward. To dare is to let your feet answer what your heart already knows. It is to give your destiny form. It is to say, I am not here to wait for permission. It is the moment your soul becomes a verb. Part 5. To keep silent, the sacred container. There comes a moment in every true journey when the fire has already been lit, the steps already taken, the voice already spoken, and yet you're drawn inward, not because you have failed, but because something deep inside whispers, now be still. To keep silent is not to retreat. It is not to stop moving. It is to understand that the most sacred things grow best in the dark. The seed does not bloom under constant light. The gold of alchemy does not form when the cauldron is opened too soon, and neither does your soul's work. Silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of depth. It is choosing not to speak, not because you have nothing to say, but because you are protecting what is still forming, because you are guarding what is still soft, still becoming. We live in a world that demands noise. Post it, share it, prove it, explain it, but the soul has its own rhythm. And not every sacred thing was made for shallow eyes. Some truths require darkness to take root. Some magic needs privacy to solidify. To keep silent is to cultivate power, not external power, inner gravity, the kind that steadies your gaze, that sharpens your perception, that speaks even when no words are used. True silence does not isolate, it anchors. It gathers the fragments of your being into one whole presence. In Hermetic tradition, silence is not the end. It is the vessel, it is the chalice that holds the transmutation. The womb where what was once raw, scattered, chaotic becomes integrated. Without silence, transformation leaks. The sacred is lost in conversation, diluted in explanation, poisoned by the need to be understood. And that is the secret. You do not need to be understood. Not always. Not yet. What you carry is still gestating, and the world may not be ready to receive it. That's okay. The oak does not apologize to the wind while it's still a sapling. Ancient initiates called this practice the silence of the initiate, not because it was weakness, but because it was protection. Energy gathers where words are withheld. Vision deepens where attention is undivided. Wisdom matures in quiet where noise would have drowned it. To keep silent is to trust that what is real does not need to be defended, that your light is not defined by how many people see it, that your path does not need applause to be sacred. So let your silence speak. Let your stillness carry the thunder. Let the mystery remain whole, not because it is hidden, but because it is holy. Part 6. The Spiral Path, Remembering Through Return. You thought the journey had 4 steps, 4 keys, 4 flames that lit the path from confusion to clarity. And in a way it did. But that was only the beginning, because true transformation does not happen in lines. It happens in spirals. Life does not carry you forward, it carries you inward, deeper, and sometimes, if you listen closely, backward, not to repeat, but to reawaken, to reveal what was once touched. Now through new eyes, new skin, new knowing. This is the sacred rhythm the ancients left encoded in myth, symbol, and story. The rhythm of the serpent that consumes itself only to be reborn. The Ouroboros, an image that disturbed some, fascinated others. But for the awakened soul, it is home. It is memory. It is how everything breathes. You return to knowing, but now it's different. No longer the shock of insight, but the calm of recognition. You know not because you searched, but because you've lived. This knowledge is no longer a flame. It is coal, glowing, stable, hidden in the hearth of your being. It warms, it doesn't burn, and this time, will comes with softness. It's no longer the roaring lion in your chest, it is now the silent river that shapes stone, a deeper current, need to force, you align, you don't crave, you allow. And the will still burns, but it burns clean, with no smoke, no doubt, no need to prove. Then daring returns, but not as leaping into chaos, This time it is precision, a movement not from fear, but from clarity. You are no longer daring to act, you are acting because you are. The line between doing and being dissolves, and in that merging, you no longer ask, "Can I?" You simply move. And silence, oh, the silence becomes different too. Not a pause, but a pulse, like breath, like ocean, like nightfall that knows morning will come. This silence is not just protection, it is a throne, a temple. It is where you no longer wait, but witness, no longer protect, but radiate. This is the spiral of mastery, not perfection, but presence, not the elimination of mistakes, but the conscious return to yourself every time you fall. Again and again, and each return deeper, wiser, quieter, and far, far more powerful. The serpent does not eat itself to die, it eats itself to remember, to refine, to become new without forgetting the old. Each turn of the spiral brings you closer to your essence, not because it adds, but because it strips, peels, reveals. Part 7, The Thrones Within, the Four Beasts of Inner Sovereignty. They have been watching since the beginning, silent, still, waiting within you. Not angels, not spirits, archetypes, ancient forces that carry the architecture of the soul. They appear in dreams, in visions, in old myths and lost scriptures. The man, the lion, the eagle, the ox. Four creatures seated beneath the throne of heaven. Four guardians of the inner temple. Four pillars of your sovereignty. They are not random symbols. They are verbs made flesh. Living embodiments of the sacred work you've already begun. The man, he is to know. He represents the seeker, the thinker, the inner eye that scans the layers of reality and asks, why? His strength is reason, but his true gift is reflection. His face appears when you pause, when you question, when you admit there may be more. He is the first light, the curious flame. Without him, you do not begin. The lion, he is to dare, raw while clothed in courage, the force that roars from the belly when fear says no. He is the teeth behind your truth, the heat in your spine, the power that makes you move when the mind hesitates. He appears in thresholds, in leaps, in the space between I can't and I must. He is sacred fire with claws, the eagle, he is to will. Vision beyond what eyes can see, the quiet intensity that rises not from emotion, but from purpose. He flies above timelines. He sees from the mountain, cuts through the fog. He does not chatter, he soars. This is the part of you that knows where you are going, even when your feet have not yet moved. He carries the compass of your soul. The ox, he is to keep silent. Strength in stillness, patient power. He doesn't need to be seen. He holds, supports, protects. He is the altar itself, the keeper of weight, the guardian of sacred timing. He teaches you when to speak and when to hold, when to act and when to rest, when to hide what is sacred until the time is right. Together, they are more than symbols. They are a throne, the place from which your soul rules, not in domination, but in divine order. When these four are in balance, you walk the world with authority that needs no crown. You speak with presence that needs no explanation. You act with clarity that asks no permission. And here is the secret. You are not meant to choose one. You are meant to become them all. The modern world teaches fragmentation. You're either the thinker or the doer, the dreamer or the realist. But ancient wisdom knows otherwise. You are not a fragment. You are a throne. When the man in you remembers, the lion dares. When the lion dares, the eagle sees. When the eagle sees, the ox holds. And when the ox holds, the kingdom within begins to rise. This is sovereignty, not over others but over yourself. It is not about ruling people. It is about mastering your inner realm. When your four beasts are honored, when your verbs become breath, when your energies stand together, you become whole. And from that wholeness, you create. Part 8, The Great Work. Living the sacred in the ordinary. It was never meant to stay in the clouds. The knowledge, the will, the daring, the silence, they were never just spiritual concepts to be admired from afar. They were steps, movements, invitations, and now they ask to be lived. This is the great work, not in some hidden temple on a mountain, not in the secrecy of ancient scrolls, but here in your kitchen, your morning routine, your relationships, your silence before sleep. The divine does not need golden altars. It lives in the ordinary when touched by presence. What good is it to know all truths if you do not breathe with intention? What good is a sacred word if it's not spoken with kindness? What good is the flame within if it never becomes warmth for another? The great work is not the peak of enlightenment. It is the deepening of embodiment, not rising above life, but descending fully into it, with eyes wide open and heart unarmored. To live sacredly is not to escape the world. It is to infuse the world with soul. Every choice you make, every word you speak, every small act becomes a thread in the tapestry of transformation. You light a candle, not for ritual, but to soften your own heart. You clean your space, not to impress, but to honor your own being. You listen, not to reply, but to truly hear. These are not small things. They are the great work in motion. You become alchemist in motion, turning fear into compassion, turning conflict into clarity, turning time into sacred rhythm. You begin to recognize that your life is not separate from the sacred. It is the sacred, wearing your face. And so the question shifts. No longer, how do I find the divine? But rather, how do I treat each moment as if it already contains it? This is not about being perfect. This is about being present, deeply, fully, imperfectly. It's about showing up to your own life as if it matters, because it does. Every breath is a spell, every silence a sacred space, every act of care a ritual, every act of truth a revolution. And even when no one sees it, even when no one understands, it still transforms you. Because the great work was never for applause, it was for alchemy of the soul. It was for building a bridge between the seen and the unseen, between your hands and your spirit. You are the bridge. In the end, it is not about words. It never was. It is not even about the knowing, the willing, the daring, the silence. All of them led here, to this, one simple, sacred thing, the breath. Not the breath that merely keeps the body alive, but the one that reminds you you are alive. The breath that listens before it speaks. The breath that pauses before it acts. The breath that remembers the soul. This is the final initiation, not into mystery, but into rhythm. The rhythm of being, a living prayer, a soul embodied, a bridge between heaven and earth with every inhale, every exhale. You do not need to escape to feel the sacred. You need only to breathe with awareness. You need only to return to the now. The breath is your anchor, your compass, your reminder that you are not just a mind thinking or a heart feeling or a body moving. You are a soul expressing. And when you live like this, present, alive, vibrating with awareness, life changes. Not because the world becomes different, but because you become different in the world. The sacred is no longer something you seek. It becomes how you walk, how you eat, how you love, how you rest. The divine meets you not in temples of gold, but in the quiet moments when you choose integrity over comfort, presence over distraction, kindness over reaction. That is worship, that is alignment, that is truth. You do not need to do more. You need only to be more, to be here, with your breath, with your soul, with the sacred that hums beneath every heartbeat. And in this breath, everything returns. The man remembers, the lion awakens, the eagle rises, the ox stands firm, and the serpent turns again, carrying you not forward but deeper. You are the verb, you are the altar, you are the vessel, you are the flame, you are the silence, you are the breath. And so the great work is no longer ahead of you. It is no longer something to begin. It is already here. Inhale, exhale, you've already begun.